from the head. Healthy societies are raised by good leaders, while bad leaders push societies into decay. If a leader is rotten, the country will be rotten. There's no country that will be rotten, or no fish, for instance, that will be rotten, and then the head of the fish is fresh. It's impossible. So once you see bad governance, know that it is bad leadership.
Okay, welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, today we're talking leadership, and in light of what's going on in the country, of course you know that we can't overstate why, or the very huge importance, why we need to get things right. And who better to talk to us about some of these things? We've got here in the studios with us, former General Martin Luther Agwai. And the thing about this, sir, is that it's rare to have former Chief of Army Staff, former Chief of Defense Staff, not two people, one. You occupied those positions. And so if you're looking through, if you're not sure, wait. But yes, and then that's why it's very interesting. I mean, you have been in leadership position for a very long time. I mean, right from the 60s when you headed a Christian fellowship in school and things like that. And you were also Pro-Chancellor, University of Calabar. So good morning. Thank you for coming on today, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, where do we even start? I mean, perhaps, let me ask you, just sitting back and watching how things unfold in the country, different parts of the country, choose your pick, whatever you have seen, are you comfortable? What strikes you when you see how the nation, how the leaders, the kind of decisions and policies and how it affects the people? What comes to your mind when you see all of that?
Well, I think what comes to my mind is that there is a disconnect between those who want to be leaders and those who want to be in leadership position. And you see, I always tell people that one thing, the Englishman who coined his language added a ship to leader, which is very important. And you know, a ship is not a small thing. I've heard you talking about boats and this. He didn't say leader boat. He said leadership.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. So, but a lot of us want to be leaders, and we forget that there is a ship to carry. So if you connect leader and ship, then you will know that there's a gigantic and big thing that is expected of you. And then you will now know that to carry a ship by one person is not possible. You need more hands to carry the ship. So that is the way I think, and that is the way I look at what happened. But I also want to say that in practicing leadership, the center thing in everything we do should be the human being. And that is why today what we have is talk of human security. Security has changed, and we need to move. When I joined the military some 50 so years back, what we were looking at security was to secure our country, to secure the government, to make sure nobody comes from outside to attack us. But today things have changed. Leadership, if you forget about the human security that talks about the needs, the human needs, then you will be grappling in the air and you will be having challenges, because once the human being cannot get his basic needs, then you have a problem to get a followership and a buy-in from him.
You know, I was reading something and just looking at my colleague, I can understand your difficulty, Chamberlain, when you look at General Martin Luther Agwai. I'm wondering, where do you start? I mean, because you have worn so many hats. Is it when you led the peacekeeping mission, the UN peacekeeping mission to Darfur, and you know, you are quoted very famously as saying you're there to work with the people of Sudan and to help them find peace. I think it's something that I guess it's a hat that you'll continue to wear even here in Nigeria, where you come from, and you know that when you go out there, people will ask you about your country, and I'm sure that you're not always very happy. I'm I'm looking at you and I can't believe you're 76. You don't look a day over 60, and I'm saying this at the risk of flattering you, but hey, I'm sure people will look at you and they will go and check as to whether you're really 76 years old. But this is the reality. This is where we currently are today, that there are so many aspects of our country where things are failing and people are dissatisfied. If people look back, it's interesting that just this month, we celebrated 64 years of independence, and people have had cause to sit and reflect. Interestingly, the president's speech was very direct. He didn't waste any time in acknowledging the sufferings of people in his Independence Day speech, looking at the current state of our economy, owing to the reforms he's trying to implement, and how that is impacting people, the state of security in many parts of the country, the challenges that people have to deal with in their environment. In Maiduguri, for instance, flooding overtaking the city, and those kinds of things that are sometimes unforeseen, some of them foreseen. As somebody who has occupied the seat of leadership and, led this country's very patriotic military, not just in Nigeria, but also led a military outside of Nigeria, where do you think we're failing? Where do you think we're dropping the ball? Where have we gotten it wrong? Some people will say it's in the area of inclusion. Is it an area that you will agree with them on?
Yes, I would definitely agree that if you include people in things that affect them, they feel they are part of it. So it's easier. I have said in some fora, what I learned in the military that have helped me a lot is a simple thing. When people outside the military keep saying the military is obeyed before complain, and that you have no say, they don't really understand the issue of what I was taught as a young cadet in 1970 of what we then were called man management, which has expanded today to be something much bigger. That if you have input from people, and I've practiced it in my service for when I was in service, even as a captain, major, until I was rising up. There's something the army called DOBA, that where you, the commander, with the company commander, battalion commander, sit with your men. People don't know this. And you discuss and ask them, what is your challenge? How do we? And I remember this same Maiduguri you are talking about. In 1974, I was posted to Maiduguri. That was my first time in that place. And the heat, because I went in April, May, it was hot. And my soldiers during Doba were complaining how their children were dying from heat and everything. And there's no way we could make life more comfortable. So during Doba, we were talking, and some soldiers said, "Oh, sir, if we can get a fan, a table fan or standing fan, we'll get a small refrigerator to put water for our children and this." I said, "Well, how do we get it?" Then I went back and I sat with some small group. I said, "How can we address this?" I went to Kitcherams in those days, and I asked them, I don't have money. I don't have any kobo with me. Say, but we have integrity. We have credibility. When I said, we want to buy things on hire purchase from you, and we will pay. Luckily at that time, the military pays, like everywhere in Nigeria, on the table. So any soldier that decides to buy, we know how much we will deduct, and we know when we count, we give you minus that. All is honesty, transparency in what you do. We were able to get this from at a discounted rate, and we're paying them religiously, and we're making 1.5% interest, whether it's legal or illegal, I don't know, but we put 1% interest for the handling charges and everything. And out of that, I was able to buy a Volkswagen Safari, which is like a small Jeep for the unit, because we didn't have one vehicle to collect pay. If I travel with my car I bought on hire purchase or loan from the army, there's no vehicle to carry even the truth pay from the bank to the unit to pay them. So from that, we were able to even buy a vehicle and give the soldiers. So if I'm not there with my little Datsun car, they still can. But it was from the discussion I had with them. I now use my little training and exposure to do that. I did that as a brigade commander in a different place in Bauchi. That was on drugs or medication. We run a drug revolving scheme. I went to the our medical center. I saw a woman crying. And I just finished playing squash. I stopped by. I said, what is wrong? They said, this woman lost her son. I said, what happened? She said, they prescribed medicine. We have no medication. So she had to go to borrow money to go to buy the medication. By the time she came, the child had died. So she borrowed money. She had medication in her hand. The child is gone.
Wow.
So that brought another challenge. We sat down as a group. We thought about it. I went to the military government. I said, please, can you loan us 50,000 naira that time? I had no money. From that, by the time I was leaving that unit, we have been able to accrue 1.5 million from 1.5% of interest. The drugs were right. The time anytime they prescribe a medication, you can't pay once, you pay instrumentally. So you have genuine drugs, you pay when you can. And so it is, leadership is trust. Leadership is transparency. Leadership is empathy.
General, let me take a quick jab at that issue that you raised about having to do these things the way you had to go about it. You said this was in the 70s.
Yes.
It was about the same time that the government of the day was saying, we don't have a problem of money. We had a problem of spending the money.
1974, 75.
About that time,
around that time.
Yes.
Remember that is the time that the person who is attributed to make that statement was overthrown.
Okay.
Yes. So let's get our facts.
So that changed. Was it that we didn't have enough money at the time as a nation?
I'm not saying, again, as a simple young soldier, officer then, and now simple old soldier, I am saying that there are things that we have to put them in their proper perspective. The army started with 200, the army that went to civil war,
yeah.
How big was it? By the time we finished the civil war, we have over 250,000 people wearing uniform. Even salary, how much is it? Not to talk about the expansion. It was easy to fight in the southeastern state, or what we call the southeast region today. That is where all the military activities were. After the Civil War, it expanded out. But let's leave it that.
The reason I raised that question actually is the welfare of the people who protect the territorial integrity of Nigeria.
Yeah.
So if it was the way you are describing it back then, I wonder, whether or not you see credibility in the complaints that we hear from, the foot soldiers in the various areas of fighting banditry and insurgents all over the nation.
Right. No, you are right that there are challenges, and we are talking about how to manage them. If we can judicially and effectively, they can be managed.
If I could just jump in, General, pardon me. I'm just wondering, sir, now, we have how far away or close would you say we are from probably getting things right, if we could use that phrase? Because we have leaders who care mostly about themselves. Yeah. And then we have maybe themselves and maybe their foreign partners who tell them what to do or who help them get into whichever office, because that happens. But we also have a group of maybe a generation of people who all they've seen are these corrupt leaders and how they've just put it in everybody's face. They rub it in everybody's face and say, look, do whatever you want. And so that is the mindset that people have. Yeah. So when you speak about leadership being about the people, hearing from the people, what do the people actually want? What do I do to make sure my people are better? I mean, incidentally, former head of state, General Agwai, is going to be 90. And some of the values and principles that the military lived by those days, the ethos, saw the country through certain times at that time. So today is completely different. So would you say we are way too far, or yes, we have a lot of work to do, but could you put it in perspective for us? How far or close, and what should we be doing to address this?
I think we're not too far, we're not too close, we're somewhere in between. And what I will say is that for leadership that we need, first and foremost, why do you want to be a leader? And yes, I do not see anything wrong in people projecting themselves to be, but there are a lot of what they have in the military. That's where I spent the whole of my life, so pardon me. People should pardon me. I have never done the little job I did before joining the military. It was very small. I then went to the military and I stayed for about 40 years wearing that uniform.
I'm sure they'll pardon you because the military has also been in power for very long in this country.
Yes, so, but because of that, that's why I say you find most of my examples and things are coming from the military, because that's where I spend most of my time.
How do you reconcile? I really hate to interrupt that question, but how would you reconcile the fact that, when people look at the military incursion in our politics, they blame it for a lot of things. They do not think that the military did us right in our, in our life as a country. They think that the incursion of military into our lives is one of the reasons why we're where we are as a country. And the examples, the fine examples you're given of your time within the military institution and how the military has Doba and all of this, other wonderful examples. How is it that it did not translate into a leadership ethos for the Nigerian people, especially in the time that the military was in power?
It's quite interesting. I've had this question being asked over and over.
Oh, you have?
Yes, but the question I always ask back, it's very easy to say military rule. How many of us in the military were involved in the political life and political running and administration of the country? Virtually all the ministers, the commissioners in the state and everything were civilians. How many times did I ever go, and I never in my life up to when General Agwai left, I will talk a little. I know I was able to see General Babangida when he was president, but up to when General Agwai left, I never saw him. The only time I see him is on parade ground. So you see, there is very easy to blanket and carry everything to the military. Who were the advisors? Who were running the banks? How many military officers were ministers? How many military officers were ambassadors outside? How many military officers were running the country? But yes, our bosses did. So by extension, we did. But minus that, we never did have any major say in it. The same people. And go back and check your record. Who then catapulted and become ministers? Who wanted to be president? They were all ministers under the military. So I am saying that it's a collective failure, not only of the military, but all that were in part of it. And that's why I wanted to say in the question you asked.
Yeah.
Because it's a collective thing. I always believe that leadership is collective. If we, whether under military, okay, the military have left. How many years? Why have we, under this civil dispensation, the civilian dispensation, we have not been able to get it right? It's collective leadership. And just as you have challenges in the military, we have challenges when the military left. But I think if we change the equation and say, what are we doing to ourselves and to our people? And then the people themselves ask, what are these our leaders doing for us? We question, because there should be accountability. But it's not. It is, what you see is winner takes all. So if we are going to have winner takes all, then I will fight for the last drop of my blood to win, so that I will take all. But if it is a thing that we all share, and we all know that everybody, whether you voted for that government or not, that government is in power, politics is over. We should be running the country and wait for the people. Give people a chance. If they feel you have done well, they will give you back. If they feel you have not done well, they will remove you.
So you don't agree, following up on Malcolm's question, you don't agree with those who say that the military foisted the 1999 Constitution on us, and consequently, we need a new one?
Well, you see, the nation is, everything about a nation is dynamic. If the military has failed, why is it taking us so long to now agree and go back if we really believe that we want to progress? And it is that military constitution that has stopped us. I believe with the number of knowledgeable people, intelligent people that we have in this country, we can sit back in another 3 months and come up with a constitution that we want. But people are running down the constitution, and yet nobody wants to change. All of us want to change. We want somebody to change, not ourselves. And just on a lighter note, somebody said we all want to go to heaven, but we don't want to die.
Well, maybe there is a vehicle that, trying to piggyback on Chamberlain's question about people. In 2019, there was this national security strategy, and I think you also spoke to it in the course of time now, that the focus should be on people security, human security, as opposed to state security. Do you see, it was a national security strategy in 2019. Yes. I don't know whether or not it was ever actioned. Do you see that happening today? Do you see a focus, deliberate, strategic focus on human security in our nation today? Do you see that strategy in play?
Well, the strategy is in place, but the execution, I think, is not flowing with the spirit of the strategy.
What's the gap?
The real gap is the implementation. If you now said you are putting people in front, and you can't provide the basic thing that the people need, then I think there is a problem. We can now ask ourselves, what is the problem? And if we know, and I'm sure you, ladies and gentlemen, even here, the four of us, we can sit down and propose solution to this, and the experts can go into and turn it into a law. We all know what is good for the human being. We all know the basic things. It is the lack of doing what we are supposed to do that have taken us this far to where we are. But we can still go back, I believe, if we are determined.
What do we need to do, General? Chamberlain cited something the other time that a leadership consultant talked about, Dr. Samadiyemi, talking about leadership with conscience.
Yes.
There are those who have opined that the problem we have in our nation is the style of government that we have, is the style of our democracy, is the choice of democracy. But just as you said, it's always a winner takes all kind of situation. But this leadership expert cited a monarchy, like in Dubai, that you can't sack them, you can't vote them out, but they are leaders with conscience. And it's appealing that our leadership should be with conscience. You have demonstrated that when you led your people in the North. How can we get there? Do you teach conscience?
Yes.
You teach leadership with conscience.
Yes. What do I mean? Why do I say yes? You have values. What values have you impacted on your children as they are growing up? If I have traveled around this country, the only state capital, 2 state capitals I've never spent a night in this country, but I have traveled to every state, is funny enough, Jigawa and Bayelsa. All other states I have spent nights, days, and days. I've traveled. Do you think that the Yoruba culture, where they wake up and kneel down and even do ballet to greet people, was born from heaven? It's passed from generation to generation. Up to today, it doesn't matter how old that person is. He knows what to do with his elder. So we can teach this thing. It's just like leadership. People say you can't teach leadership. You can teach leadership. It's beginning. How do you start? At the start, what is our primary from the local primary level? What do we do? In our homes, what do we do? When children go to school and the parents follow it to go and abuse a teacher for scorning his child in school for doing something wrong, where is that not, we are showing the children that you cannot be corrected? So you see, I think we have to take it the whole. Anything we want, we have seen it. Let's put it in our curriculum. Let's bring back what we think has gone wrong. Our history. How much people are rewriting history, changing history every day because they want to tell those in power what they want to hear. When I was in position, I had that feeling. People want to tell me what I want to hear and not what I need to know so that I can react in the right direction to do the right thing. When you keep away the leaders from the people, they don't understand what is happening.
General, so, I'm sorry, Kimberly. How do we get today's leaders to have conscience?
Today's leaders may be difficult. We have to be frank to ourselves. You see, again, if you take a tree, a branch, you know, if you bend it when it's wet and cool, you can make a bow out of it and you can use. But if you allow it to dry and you want to bend it, you will break it. But if we now, and I say my feeling, I may be wrong, I'm not an expert, but if we start it from now, today, say, this is what we want from our primary education onward, these are the values we want to, and we look at first how patriotic we should be, how we should treat our neighbor as ourselves, and how there is enough to go around. And we can not all be equal, even our fingers are not. So we cannot all be equal. But the basic, we should all have.
All right, General, as you wind down, are you going to be doing anything for General Gowon's birthday? Any special event going on?
Yes, there is this event for General Gowon at 90. And I'm so delighted that I'm part of the group because, as I told you, as a young person in 1970, when I joined the military, he was the head of state. We saw in him leadership. We saw in him credibility, honesty, of sincerity in what he does. He's not an angel. None of us is one. But he came at a most crucial time. And I'm talking this as a soldier, as an officer. And I'm happy you have you have mentioned some leadership position I have both locally and internationally. When people sit down and write history, we're sitting in this air-conditioned room talking about it. You don't know what that person was going through. I'll tell you a personal example. The day Nigerian battalion moved from Sierra Leone to go and be a vanguard battalion in Liberia, I didn't sleep. I was wondering what would happen to my soldiers. Would any of them get wounded? Would any of them get killed? Would the helicopter be shot down? And everything. But today, those who are going to write anything about Agwai, they will say anything under air condition. They don't know what was in my brain. The same thing about any leadership position that others are holding, like General Gowon, that at 32, 33, 34, he led this country into he fought a civil war and were able to come back. And he did not glorify himself to say, oh, I have done it. Say, no victor, no vanquish. We're Nigerians in Hana fighting, let's unite. And from that day till today, he has been singing about unity of Nigeria. I think he needs to be recognized. It needs to be celebrated.
And that's a fine place to anchor this morning. We've had the pleasure of talking to retired General Martin Luther Agwai, former Chief of Army Staff, former Chief of Defense Staff, among several caps, also Pro-Chancellor, University of Calabar. He's led Nigeria's troops internationally as well. So I think we'll definitely look forward to having you again, sir, so we can have another expansive session on leadership. And then security, we didn't even delve into those areas, so it would have been lovely, but you know what happens with time. Yes, indeed. Thank you for coming on, and all the best to you, sir. Business Morning on Sunrise Daily comes up now.